Okay. I still don't know if this thing is working. Okay. Looks like it's live now. And for those of you that do know me, this is I hit myself in the head not too long ago, uh, making the bed and hitting my head on the computer screen, which wasn't fun. Luckily, I didn't have to get stitches. So, anyway, it's around 12 p.m. where I am in Texas. And I thought I'd give you all a good roundabout idea of what this podcast is going to be about. For those of you that probably or don't want to listen to the podcast and instead want to watch something on YouTube or just get a glimpse of it from Facebook and possibly you could share it with somebody. So I guess it really starts back when my dad passed away, and I had been having a discussion with my sister about this. Throughout my life, I've always been the person of ideas. There were things that I've always felt a deeper connection to, rather than people, things, money, etc. And this isn't. Don't take this as me putting a judgment out there. If those things are important to you, it's just a mere fact. Like when I was in high school, if a teacher told me that X project was due today, sorry, in a month from now, I would do it the next day. If I had to memorize something, I would memorize it the next day. And I always wasn't like that. I was kind of a knucklehead in middle school. I got in trouble a lot. And when I say a lot, probably more than is average for the typical student. But even when I went into college, I had this idea that, or more so this feeling that there was more to life. I studied philosophy, I studied history, I studied mathematics. I ended up graduating with a degree in philosophy and a minor in religious studies. And after exploring all these ideas, there was this commonality that I started to see throughout the course of my undergraduate career, that all of these religious underpinnings, all these philosophical ideas, there's almost this perennial idea and interconnectedness with them all. People 2,000 years ago were still trying to figure out what makes a good life. People 10,000 years from now, I don't think those ideas of how you are supposed to best live will cease existence. And more often than not, these are the questions that I was most intrigued by as early as I can remember. I think it's probably when I was in high school and we talked about Socratic dialogue and discovering what you believe in X, so why do you believe in X? And I think that was the beginning of my sort of inquiry into something more, my inquiry into the ties that bond us and also the ties that separate us and why they separate us, right? So, fast forward, I ran a business, married, and then I wasn't on the best of relationships with my father. We had gotten into an argument 6 months before he died, and I didn't speak to him for 6 months. And then he died. And it's kind of a sobering moment for myself because on the one extreme, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have been so stubborn to not want to discuss anything with him. I should have just made the call. And I know from my sisters that he felt the same way, but we were both too stubborn to admit it. So when he died, there were a lot of things going on in my life, and it started to make me question why I was doing certain things, because I had left college with this fundamental underpinning of my life that, hey, ideas are worth exploring, people are worth knowing. There is there is more to life than you just picking X career and going down that pathway for the rest of your life. So when I graduated college, I actually went to the Middle East. I was already studying Arabic in North Africa the previous year. Then I continued. I went to Jordan, Israel, West Bank, and yeah, I didn't plan on coming back. So anyway, I came back and I went into business, in a fitness business, and I remember the first year of the owning the business, and it was the first summer that I really hadn't done anything, because up until that point, every summer, high school summers, college summers, I was either traveling or studying or doing something in a pursuit of some sort of philosophical pursuit or a learning pursuit. And every year that I was in business, there were great times. Like, don't get me wrong, I made some really great relationships. I made some really bad relationships. Made some good business decisions, made some bad business decisions. But throughout the entirety of it, I started to sort of morphologically develop into someone that I wasn't very different from who I was, but I started to prioritize different things. Like, I started to look at, myself as an image and how I can improve myself physically. I was always into exercise and fitness, but then I started to think about, how could I grow my Instagram following? How could I look better? How could I, be a more suitable mate for someone else, And it started to change the way I looked at the world, and it started to change the way the people that I hung out with. And fast forward again to my father passing away, and I realized right then and there, when I got the call, and it was the weekend, and it was my grandmother's birthday, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and my parents are divorced, and my sister had spoken to my dad the night before. And the next day, I think they were trying to get in contact with him, and he wasn't picking up his phone, which is strange, because if there's one thing my dad loved to do, it's talk, just like myself. But I didn't realize it until after he passed away, that we were more alike in that aspect than I would have realized back then. So we got a call, and he didn't pick up his. Well, we tried to reach out to him, no answer, no answer, no answer, and then we tried to phone friends of his to see if there was any miscommunication or something. Maybe he lost his phone, maybe he was dead, maybe he's sleeping. Turns out he was at a card game with his friends late at night, and when he left the card game, there were people there who he was playing cards with, obviously. He had asked one person in the card game if he could move their car so he could back out, because I'm guessing he was parked and there was someone. He was parked and someone was parked behind him, and he asked the person for their keys, and he backed out that person's car so he could then walk to his car. And when he got out of that person's car on the street, he was walking back to his car, and he never made it. And he fell on the ground. He had a massive heart attack, and he was outside for 20 minutes. By the time the person who my father left the keys in the car, or by the car, came out, it was 20 minutes later. And by that point, my dad had been, lacking oxygen to the brain for about 20 minutes. And he ended up getting rushed to the hospital. When we found this out, we didn't realize the extent of it until I actually arrived at the hospital. We were brought into this room, and they told us that my dad was pretty much brain dead and was sort of like a vegetable. And that didn't, you don't realize the impact of something like that when it happens until you're in that moment and you realize like, holy shit, like, again, back to my younger self, like, what is this whole thing in life about, really? And how are you supposed to move on from here, right? So shortly thereafter, I think a couple days went by, or one day, and put a do not resuscitate on, because at that point he was a vegetable and there's no coming back from that. So when he passed away, had the funeral arrangements. I had so many things I had to take care of in my business, and um, I have just been recently married. I think 2 years at that point, and wow, I looked at life incredibly different. Um, I looked at my relationships incredibly different, because when you have someone who, at the time, I didn't care. I mean, not that I didn't care about. I was like, I was pissed at, um, and then not to have any sort of, not that I didn't have closure, but you sort of start to think about, like, what is life really supposed to be about? What are the things that you want to be not remembered by, but what are the things that you want to be defined by, and what are the principles that you hold to be true, and how are you supposed to make sense of it all once again? And like I said, when that happened, I started to realize that a lot of things need to be reevaluated and rethought of and improved. So when that happened, did a lot of soul searching. I started back on my journey of reading a lot, engaging with people uh, towards the more improved version of myself, not in the sense of, not that I was in a quid pro quo relationship with people, but I started to really honor relationships a lot more, and honor myself a lot more, and not do things that I didn't really feel genuinely satisfied by, or um, having such a demonstrable impact on myself. If it didn't, I wasn't going to do it. So at that point, I changed my business model, and I was like persecuted from when I changed my business model, from just providing people with sort of a low level, unconscious um, fitness, to bringing consciousness to the forefront. And I was lambasted and charged with, this blasphemous attack on their rights. To put that into layman's terms, I was running a CrossFit gym in which I felt more like a cheerleader, and sort of a, like, in a way, like, hey, I pay you, you should be doing this for me. And then I realized, like, this is a terrible way to approach fitness. Um, and especially to have a fulfilling career, how is one supposed to, like, cheerlead other people throughout their life if life is not some cheerleading competition, right? And I wanted to bring people back to reality. Like, I had been punched in the face when my dad passed away, and now I wanted to bring, not necessarily a death in their life, but sort of give them a little bit of a, like, a punch in the face, and say, like, hey, like, why are you doing fitness in the first place? Like, to come to, loud music, crazy lights, and just be unconscious about every single aspect of your life, and come into a place where you can forget about everything. Like, what kind of person would I be if I still encourage that mindset? And I couldn't look at myself in the mirror any longer if I was going to be worth, if my name was going to be worth anything in salt, I couldn't do that any longer. So I switched business models, and I went along my way of keeping people who truly wanted, not just health in their life, but to improve their lifestyle, and wanted to become more conscious of their attitudes, their fears, their nutrition, and why they were doing it in the first place. Because I had that reevaluation when my dad died. Like, why am I doing this And why am I continuing along this pathway if something as tragic as a father or mother or brother or sister passing away made you realize this, and the finitude and the shortness and quickness which life can just be taken away from? I'm like, this makes no sense to me at all. And it didn't fulfill me. And I did what I did. It may not have been the best business decision. If I just cared about making money, I would just continue along the same path. And people think that it was purely a business decision, like a monetary decision, like I knew I could make more money. Absolutely not. It was more of a need in me to bring about a change in the world of fitness, to do so. And would I say I'm successful? Absolutely. Would I say that it was it was going to change the world? Well, you change the world by changing a person. And I think there are many people who, as a result, had a great experience and are forever changed and realize all the things that they've uncovered as a result of engaging in, a business service that I provided. So during the course of time in that career, I thought about doing a podcast because I had so many clients and I was doing so much reading. I was seeking out mentors to learn more about myself, and learn more about my career and learn more about people in general. And I didn't realize that this was this was an aspect of my dad that I hated. What I mean by that is, it's not, I don't think I'm saying I hated my dad. No, my dad was a larger than life personality who had a great laugh, great smile, always happy go lucky, no issues. And everywhere he went, he met someone. Everywhere he went, he knew someone. Everywhere he went, he would come back with a story. Every person he interacted with, it was a jovial experience and a grand old time. My dad had the quote unquote gift of gab. He had many different jobs over the years, and he was genuinely interested in people like myself. And when I was younger, my friends would say, "Oh, he's the mayor of Long Island," because a lot of people knew him, and it was fun when it was fun, and it wasn't fun when it wasn't fun. Meaning, when we'd go to places and we'd get free food, it would be awesome. When we'd go to places and we had deadlines in terms of, hey, I got to be back home for 3 o'clock, or I'm out for an hour. For my dad, that would be 2-3 hours. And then he would want to know more about this person, that person. Hey, here's my son. Here's my daughter. Listen to my kids. I took it as him always showing off, but I didn't realize this was a person who was super duper proud of his kids. All 3 of my older sisters have graduated college, and we're all married to people who are college graduates. Not saying that if you're not married to a college graduate, it means anything, but he was just utterly proud, and I didn't really appreciate it at all. Then I looked at it more as an annoyance. So I wanted to do the podcast, and it was the reason why was because there were many people inside of my business who had said, like, you have such great knowledge, I wish, I love coming here. I want to hear more about you. I want to learn more. And like, it would be great to do it. And I was thinking about it at the time, like, how great it would be to talk to people about just anything, just as I'm doing here now. And I was trying to come up with a name, and I had this idea of like, I'm of the mindset that you are in control of your life. You are in control of every single aspect. You have a bad relationship, it's your fault. You have a bad job, it's your fault. You have a bad eating day, it's your fault. Someone doesn't love you the way you want them to, it's your fault. it's almost in the same way that a guy like Jocko Willing talks about like extreme ownership. And for me, it was about like seeking out knowledge, learning it, and then owning that knowledge and boring it out in the world and seeing if it held its weight. And more often than not, it did. And for clients, I know the results and the relationships that were built and the improvements that were made in their lifestyles as a result. So I thought about like personal power. Like we each have this finite or infinite amount of power over whatever it is in our life. Like if we want to improve our circumstances, start doing it. If you want to improve your job, start doing it. If you want to engage even with a podcast, start doing it. So I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to make a podcast. So I researched how to do it. And I did my first episode, my intro, and people loved it. I sent it out to people. They loved it. It was a huge success. While that was going on, I was running my business, married, so many things going on. I was trying to find coaches, and I had been working 7 days a week for, gosh, as long as I can remember, 4, 5, 6 years, pretty much of my life. And the podcast became, do I have to? Like, people really want to hear my voice. It became something that I didn't want to do. And I pushed it away and, wrapped it up and said, I'm done. And I didn't want to do it because it felt like it was taking away time from other things that I was doing at the time. And I was being pulled in so many different directions. Even though I was happy with where I was going, it just wasn't the right time to be doing so. So fast forward to now, and my wife and I moved to Texas, and I had been looking for work, and I had something lined up, but then it fell through. It's just the nature of life. You can't be too sad about it. It just happens, right? You just have to be prepared for it. So coming down here, I was trying to figure out doing something on my own. And I had been always reading, writing, putting my thoughts down on paper. And I thought, like, maybe I should go back onto the podcast and sort of revive it. And then I was like, no, I shouldn't do it because, making excuses, I don't have a mic. I need all this stuff. And then I just said, you know what? Screw it. Let's just go for it. I'll make one episode and see if people like it. And I sort of went into it with the same outcome I was desiring with the other one, which was, if people like it, I'll continue. But at least this time, I'm not as busy as I once was, and could really give people my time, energy, and thought processes that I'm going through. Excuse me. So I did that, and that was Revival of the Personal Power Project. And, I loved it. I started to realize that I have a voice within me that people need to hear. Whether or not they like it or not, I'm going to be there. And it also resonated with me because currently in our American climate, and even around the world, there is so much confusion as to what to believe, what not to believe, what's truth, what's not truth, how should I get on with my day? How shouldn't I get on with my day? What can I do better? What can I do? What's hampering me? And again, it started to bring me back to those college days of like philosophy. Like philosophy starts for me when you have a question and the answer can be many things. That's philosophy. All science, all of the humanities stem from philosophical discussion, right? Like, think about it. If I'm trying to figure out, Galileo Galilei, who's trying to figure out the center of the universe. Is it the moon or is it the sun? It starts with, which was later termed the scientific method, but to begin with, it starts with putting out an idea that you want to see if it's true or not. I did this with fitness. I did this with exercise. I did this with books. I did this with relationships, right? Is this relationship going to work out? Well, if it works out, this is what will happen. And if it doesn't work out, this is what will happen. Is the sun the center of the universe? Well, if it is, this is what should happen. If it isn't, this is what should happen. So I said, you know what? There's a need in the world for me to get those thoughts out there. Like, are these questions just the questions that I'm thinking about, or are they out there in the world? And to me, they are out there in the world. And I made the podcast, and ever since each podcast I've done, it's been like not a weight off my shoulders, but sort of I get inspired by each one. And every time, the podcast itself is about, honing your individuality, utilizing reason, utilizing dialogue, and using power, right? Not in the sense of, any sort of like understanding of, might makes right. It's not about that. It's about that you are in control, right? Not only are you important as an individual, your life matters, but the power that you can have over yourself is enormous. And we tend to forget that because everything around us wants to deafen us, and not make us necessarily weak, but not encouraging your spirit, so to speak. And I want to bring on the guests on this show, which I already have some coming up this week and next week, who think differently than me, or who have thought differently than me. I should put it that way, because my thoughts have changed a lot in the past year or so, just as a matter of, learning new information, right? When you learn new information, it shouldn't hurt you, right? New information should just provide you with a new inkling of what you thought may be the case, and now it isn't the case. It isn't the case. Too often are we married and identified to our own ideas, that when we come into contact with an argument, we think that if someone defeats my argument, they are killing me. But if you are not your ideas, how could this person kill you and make you feel bad? Too often I am here, and my perception of my ideas are here, and they're married together. And that's wrong. It's wrong on so many levels, because then you can't distinguish yourself from your ideas. And they need to be distinguished in order for you to look at it objectively. Otherwise, you're going to be taken down the role of constantly thinking your ideas are yourself. And if someone hurts them, they're hurting you. Like, the old adage, like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, words will hurt you when you are exactly identified and the same person as your ideas. Your ideas should be out there in the world, and you pick and choose them. And you're like, how do I think about that differently? Because when we learn information, all we're doing is trying to find the same information over and over again, especially on social media right now. The minute we find one piece of information, we just want to find more of it to confirm it. And then you, again, get what's called confirmation bias. Instead of seeing things instead of seeing things as gray, we see them as black and white. This person believes X, and now I identify all people like that as X. This person believes Y. Now I identify all people like that as Y. And everything that I've learned over the years in my philosophical career is that, well, one, that you can make a philosophy of anything pretty much, but two, that rational dialogue is the only way towards bettering ourselves and humanity. That's it. When you think about all the issues in the world, it's only been as a result of poor communication, poor dialogue, not better dialogue, like shit dialogue. And we don't even know how to argue. We don't even know how to assess an argument. We don't even know how to distinguish truth from fact, evidence from anecdote. And to me, that really goes to a deep seated belief in myself that the more we do that and the more we don't have that, the less likely we are going to be able to relate to one another and understand that we are in this collectively together to be part of something larger than ourselves, right? If we actually want the world to be a better place, which I think that is a bullshit excuse for a lot of people just to say that they want the world to be a better place, but they're not doing anything about it to make it a better place. And I think one way that I can contribute, it may not even work, but I'm willing to be in the arena to do so, is by having conversation, is by letting you, followers, subscribers, a glimpse at what's possible. Because what is possible right now? Like, we just keep going into echo chambers, keep silencing ourselves. We keep, name calling each other. And there's a time and place for that. Like, if you're on a football team, you sort of have the right to be like, yeah, you suck. It's a football game. It's winners and losers. What winners and losers are there in life? Just tell me. Because I don't know any of winners or losers. I just know people that are here and then they die. And we're making it seem like we're all on different teams. And if my again, because we identify with our arguments, if I lose, I die. If I win, I scored. And it's such a bullshit way to go about life. And I was getting sick of it. And it's part of the reason why I wanted to get on the podcast and start recording something, because we don't realize the impact our words have, and we don't realize the impact they have on our mental state. Constantly being in this framework where you identify with your ideas leads you down a path of constantly feeling victimized. It leads you down a path of constantly looking at others as enemies. It leads you down the path of constantly looking at yourself and the need to feel safe or protected. And it's like, wait, in life, what protections are there in general? Like, do you want to walk through life in sort of a bubble? And the expression is correct, right? This person is, they live within a bubble. There's a reason why the cliche is there, because they believe everything with inside their bubble is truth and everything outside is false, fact, fiction, and doesn't matter. And I think all of them are poor examples of what we need to be doing, which is not creating bubbles at all, but realize that we are all within this bubble. Call it the earth. It's a round bubble. And if we are going to, again, make any strides, it's through conversation, right? And that's the main drive as to why I want to do the podcast. It's the main drive for even the people that I'm bringing on. Like, some of the people that I'm bringing on, they're going to make you question things, but you shouldn't take their reasoning as gospel. The same reason why you shouldn't take a politician's reasoning as gospel. There's a reason why the ancient Greeks, Socrates, Plato, they were determined to be, by our conventional standards, as philosophers, and they called out what they called as sophistry. Sophistry was a method of argument in which it didn't matter the truth of the argument, but just that it was sophisticated, so to speak. So you see where sophistry and sophisticated come in from, right? It was to prove a point, not to actually determine if the truth of the argument is there, but to convince you of it. And who does this better than anybody? Politicians, even our news media does it with all of the clickbait that's available. And, our friends want us to hang on to certain beliefs that we have because we want to feel more comfortable if we're in this same group. And we're like, yeah, I believe that too. And it's like, but then you start to unravel whatever sort of reasoning you can create that would demarcate from what's anecdote, what's truth. Is this verifiable? Can I see through this sort of facade that this person may be hiding? And we don't. We play on emotions. We play on our feelings. And feelings themselves, it's not that I'm against you feeling a certain way, but feelings themselves are just as liable to error. And sorry to make this philosophical, but go back to Descartes. The reason why he said he thought of a way to start from first principles about his existence. And he said, if I doubted everything in my life, how can I exist and how can I create the underpinnings of what my existence means? And it was the cogito ergo sum, which is I think, therefore I am, right? And people love using this fucking quote like, yeah, I think, therefore I am. It has nothing to do with thinking. It's just the fact that he's a thinking thing. And because he's a thinking thing, he deduced that means he exists. It's not for smartasses to be like, yeah, I'm thinking about something, like take a photo. I think, therefore I am. Just wrong. You're not even getting it. So, but what he talked about in that the meditations was how often do our senses lead us into a misjudgment, right? How often are we in our dreams that we think it's a reality, right? How often are we in our we get pinched and we're like, we thought we died, like, oh my god, it hurts so bad. It's like, does it really? And this is how we're going about everything in our life. We're going about it and taking the extreme versions of each and everything, and there is no center ground. That's another reason why I would love to get these speakers on here and have them coming on, is because we're being presented with information that either confirms to a narrative or doesn't confirm to a narrative, and we write them off as if it was the paper being delivered to our house as, oh, screw it, I don't even care about it, like just something outside of the ordinary. When we should be having those tough conversations, we're just left with snippets of everything. So this will be a long form podcast. This will be an open forum podcast. This will be, I hope that I can get even more and more speakers on, in which I can do live chats and have folks in the YouTube world to contribute and want to ask questions that I don't have the answer to, but I can rationally think about and ask you, like, why do you believe such and such? Because if there's something that we all know, it's that many people have different ideas, but too often are they now becoming mainstream in the sense that the ideas that were once unique are now becoming more and more created in a way to silence everyone who doesn't think like that. Nice. Reading about the same topic. Yeah, New Earth book. Is that from give me a second. Is that from who wrote that book? That was, I forget his name now. Power of Now, Jeff. Anyway, yeah, it's exactly the same. And as you know, Jeff, I'm sure as you're listening to this, that there are a lot of people who are getting caught up in their own thought process, regardless of the information that they have. Meaning, we almost always are learning things about ourselves, and then we rationalize about how wrong we are, how weak we are, all the things that can go terrible for me. When in fact, if those are the things you are thinking about, if those are the things that you're thinking about, then what are the things that you're actually positive about? What are the things that you actually are taking on and trying to discover about yourself that are against this or different than this? And that's where most of us fall day to day. We think life is a drag. We think it's terrible. We think, oh, if only I can, get through this. Like, and it's a way of living that is, to me, deadening our relationship with ourselves, and it has been going on for a long, long time. And it bothers me that that's how people can go through life. People should be going through life with seeing the world as like this shining light of what is possible, but instead we're limiting it to, oh well, that's the way it's going to be, like, and it's, again, another reason why the podcast is here is because I want to show you people who are just like yourself. They're not talented beyond belief. They're normal human beings like yourself, and they've done something extraordinary that I think is worth highlighting. And how they did it was simply by encouraging whatever was present within inside themselves and put it out there in the world. If you listen to my podcast, you'll know that there are so many things that I've started that I haven't finished. And part of it is because, this book is already written, that poetry is already, out there in the world. And like, I have millions of ideas day in and day out. And sometimes I get overwhelmed by them and I get consumed by them. But if we don't act on any of our ideas, then you will realize over time, like, it would have been better to have started than to not have started at all. And to me, I as long as I enjoy doing this, as long as I have good content to put out there, as long as I feel that I'm putting something out there worthwhile for people, as long as they feel that it's valuable to them, as long as they feel that they're learning more, I would be very, very pleased to know that there are people out there, even if it's 15 of you, that their understanding of themselves and the world is somewhat improved, or they're thinking about things differently. And again, I've said it in my podcast, this isn't, some sort of Tony Robbins motivational speech at all. I'm not here to tell you, get out there and do it. If that's what you get from it, great. But I just want you to know, if you're going to go get out there and do it, to really understand the fundamental underpinning and reason why you feel you want to get out there and do it. And it's something that I feel will allow you to see the deeper meaning of your own life and look at yourself as really, the possibilities of you being here are just amazing. First, let me point that out, right? It's unbelievable that we can even think about these ideas, and we can talk about philosophy. We can talk about our experience in life. We can talk about what life should be like. We can talk about, like, what types of foods are good for you. It's an honor to be able to be doing those things. And yet we really drag on as if it were like terrible to be doing these things. Like, and it's not to sound like I'm against pessimism. Pessimism is great. but maybe I'm the eternal optimist. And perhaps pessimism, you might think, is like more in reality with the world, but I don't see anything further from the truth, because there's been a creative expression of human beings for years and years. And whether or not it's better or worse or right or wrong, I'll let Hamlet, or Shakespeare rather, tell you that for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So analyze your conceptions of what is good, what is bad. Analyze your conceptions of what my true desires are, and understand your conceptions of everything. Like, I will have, again, people on who have written books on philosophy, who have written books on economics, who have written books on medicine, proponents of, Second Amendment rights, people who don't like Second Amendment rights. I'll have people on who, are experts in their field in health and fitness. I'll have people on who are experts in holistic medicine, experts who are, and people that I admire who talk about communication, people to hear about, how best to have a relationship in life. And there is nothing out there right now, in my opinion, that gives that. Everything is, again, segmented. We watch people who have a podcast on X, we watch people who have a podcast on Y, and never is the dialogue so open, so like liable to twists and turns and interesting takes that I want to put that out there. And it was either create an app or do the podcast. And the app seemed like a huge endeavor, which I started learning how to code, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a this is a big endeavor. So for those of you who know how to code out there, I give you a thumbs up, because it's very difficult. I tried Java and Python, and I learned the basics of them, but to put it all together, I felt that my voice would be of better use, and the time that it would take me to learn that would be time that I'm taking away from this. Everything is an economic decision, in my opinion, as well. And for me, the economics of me allocating resources towards this was much more fruitful. So I will go in closing and say that, again, the podcast is reading some of the live chat. The podcast is, I'm going to try and put out there 10, I'm looking at the, how many people are inside here. I'm going to try and put out, in my hopes, like 2 to 3 podcasts per week. I will aim to do a solo cast at least once per week, because as I'm doing digging and understanding more the books that I'm reading and things like that, it becomes not difficult, but in order for me to put out the kind of content that I want to put out, I really want to synthesize the information. And I had an old professor of mine who he might come on here too. He would say how he thinks it's ridiculous that we have to get a degree in 4 years, and I couldn't agree more. He told his kids to get a degree in 5 years or 6 years. And the reason why is because we tried to fit so much stuff, like all of this stuff within 4 years, like take your core courses, take these classes, take these classes, and then pick a major. It's like when you get to college, you don't even know who you are, and then you want to pick a career. And not to get off topic, but this may be another discussion. Like, we're not too far off from the animal ancestors we once were, and sort of a more stratified society where decisions were made for us, and now we're put in the hot seat to make concrete decisions about our life forever, when that idea has never been present. Never. It's wild. So this professor it would say, like, you need to take like 2 classes a semester. Why? Because you need time to let like the ideas marinate. So that's the reason why I'm putting even 1 solo class a week is a stretch, but I think I can do it, because I read pretty voraciously, and I can read. I don't know how many books I have out right now that I'm reading. I can count 3, 4, 5, 5. I'm reading roughly 5 books right now, and again, that's not a thing that you should want to do or desire to do, but that's just how I read. And I'm building our website, so and building our Facebook page, building our Instagram page, and I'm putting out there like 1 solo cast a week with possibly 1 or 2 interviews per week. Again, this is very courageous and possibly pushing the limits, but I think it's possible because, again, I've sent out numerous emails and I've gotten such warm replies from everyone. And yeah, I would love if you guys, I'll put an email on the chat if you guys are in there. If you'd like to send me emails, if you'd like to learn more, if you'd like to even know the books that I'm reading, feel free to do so, because I think if everyone read these books, the world would be a lot different. Not in the sense that like there would be less war, but I think people would just think differently. And thinking differently doesn't mean that it's counter to the current narrative, but to me, it's a more deep learning, to use a machine learning, I guess, definition, right? It's like we want to go deeper, whereas everything's surface. It's like the glacier. 10% is showing, and 90% is below. So I will again. I'll put my email in the chat box, and again, send me an email. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you think of anyone that would be interesting for me to have on, please let me know. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that. As I end all my podcasts, I say peace and love, because I don't know. I like to have peace, and I like love. All right. So thanks for tuning in, and yeah, be sure to check out the podcast. Like this video, share it with someone. If you don't feel like sharing it, I don't give a shit. Don't share it. It makes no difference, because if there's only 5 people, I will say this: my sister has had such a pleasant experience from the podcast. So if that's the only person that I encourage to think more deeply about things, then it's worth it for me, because I know how much she's been through, and it makes me happy to know that it's able to help her in her own way. And yeah, it's meaningless otherwise. So that's all I'll say. Thanks, guys, and enjoy your Tuesday. Take care.